welcome. Welcome you all to the first Broyhill lecture in the new auditorium for the academic year. Delighted to have you all here. And this series, as many of you who are regulars here know, that this series is made possible by the generous support of the Broyhill Family Foundation. And we're fortunate to have, I think, the largest turnout of the Broyhill family that we've had for, at least in my days here. So we're delighted to have the Broyhill family, and I'm going to introduce, and I hope I get each one of you. If not, please tell me that I missed one. We're delighted to have you here. We have Senator Jim Broyhill and his wife Louise. Welcome. And Penn Broyhill and his wife Natalie. Welcome. Ashley Broyhill. Does Ashley make it yet? Ashley Beach. Sorry, excuse me. And Martha and Charlie Sutton and Aline Broyhill Stevens. Welcome. Thank you all.
Ed Broyhill.
Ed, welcome. Delighted to have you here. We hope that this will be an occurrence for every Broyhill speech that we have. Thank you. And I think we have a reception to sort of formally recognize you for the donation of this wonderful room in a week or so. I think we'll see you all again. So delighted to have you here. It's my privilege today to introduce our guest and my friend, Debra Lee. Debra is the Chair and Chief Executive Officer at BET Networks, which is the leading provider of entertainment for African American audiences and for the Black cultural community globally. Named as one of Hollywood's Reporter's 100 most powerful women in entertainment, Debra is recognized as one of this country's most respected business executives. Under her leadership, BET has successfully reinvigorated the brand, has achieved a highly successful programming vision that created hits resulting in consistent increases in viewership and revenues, with hits such as Let's Stay Together, The Game, Black Girls Rock, and The Monique Show, and many more. She's guided BET's reinvigorated approach built on several principles that are so important to her as she's worked to make this happen, and that is supporting families, embracing and encouraging their dreams, focusing on the issues that are important to them, and presenting the freshest talent and entertainment. She's managed the launch of Centric, the 24-hour entertainment network featuring the artists, music, series, movies, and the reality programming that reflects the lifestyle and sophistication of today's African Americans and built on a multicultural adult population. In a 25-year plus career at BET Networks, Debra has earned numerous accolades for her performance in the industry. She is inducted into the Broadcasting and Cable Hall of Fame, the Washington Business Hall of Fame. She's honored with the Leadership Vanguard Award by the National and Telecommunications Association, and she's affiliated with a number of professional, civic, and cultural organizations. She's also a member of the National Board of Directors of Alvin Alley Dance Theater, the National Symphony Orchestra, the Economic Club of Washington, the Paley Center for Media, the Kennedy Center's Community and Friends Board, and Debra was appointed to the White House, by the White House to the President's Management Advisory Board. She's a member emeritus of the Federal Communication Commission's Advisory Committee on Diversity for Communications in the Digital Age. She serves as the chair of the Ad Council's Board of Directors. She serves on the corporate boards of Revlon, Washington Gas, and I have the privilege of serving with Debra on the board of Marriott. And at Marriott, we call her Debbie. In addition to all of that, Debbie is the proud mother of 2 children that she spends a lot of time with as a high priority in her life, and she fits that all into the other things that she does. As you probably read from her bio, she is a graduate of the Harvard Law School, and she got her law degree simultaneously with getting a master's degree from the John F. Kennedy School of Government, and she graduated from Brown University with a bachelor's degree in political science. So you can see Debbie is clearly an overachiever. And she now serves on Brown's Board of Trustees. So with that wonderful record, with the tremendous background she's had, let me start off the questions today. And I'm going to start the questions, and after a little bit of time, we'll let you all pick it up from there. But let me start off today by saying, with this amazing background, how did you end up in media?
That's a great question. It's a long answer, depending on where you want me to start. But first of all, let me say I'm delighted to be here, Steve, and I really appreciate the invitation. I admired Steve for years as he served as CEO of Pepsi and then coming down here. So I'm delighted to be here. I feel...
I forgot one thing in
Yes,
your introduction.
I was getting ready to get to that.
That you're home. We're welcoming Debbie home. She actually grew up in Greensboro, and she would come to the big city of Winston-Salem
To hang out.
for recreation and shopping.
Right, yeah, so that's where I was going to start for recreation, right. And I actually went to the governor's school, which was at Salem College in Winston-Salem. So when I was in high school, so I went, I don't know how many of y'all from North Carolina, but I went to Dudley High School in Greensboro. So I should start my journey there. It's all black public high school. My dad was in the Army, and that means we traveled around a lot, all over the world, Germany, DC, LA. But when he retired, we moved to Greensboro. So I went to junior high and high school in Greensboro, and I call that home. And at that point, I thought I wanted to go into journalism. I thought I liked to write, and I thought I was going to go into journalism. Then I went away to Brown University and found out that Brown really encouraged you to either go to law school or business, and law school or medical school. Business school wasn't even in the equation at that point. I went to college a long time ago. But so I decided law school was going to be my path. And I majored in Chinese Communist ideology. It was the 70s. And had an afro out to here. And then I went to Harvard Law School, and I thought I was going to go, by that time I decided, okay, I need a profession, I'm going to good school, law school sounds fine. But I thought really in terms of law being a way to change the world. I grew up, I was born the year Brown versus Board of Education was decided. I was first generation to be able to go to Ivy League schools. So I thought I was going to go into law and, become Thurgood Marshall or at least Constant Baker Motley or someone close to that. I was going to make the world a better place by being a lawyer. Well, that's not what Harvard Law teaches. And I got to Harvard Law and found out they were very corporate focused, which was not what I wanted to do at all. So I hated law school. First year at law school, I was like, okay, I've made a mistake here, but I can't drop out. I can't not finish. So what did I do? I added a degree on to try to make it better. And so I decided to get a master's in public policy. And I thought that that would help me get into government. So I thought I would go become assistant secretary of something. And that was going to be the way I changed the world. Well, I came to Washington, clerk for a year for a judge named Barrington Parker Sr. And during that year, Ronald Reagan won. And he put a hiring freeze, sounds familiar, on the government. And so my nice job at the Securities and Exchange Commission that I had put on hold for a year to go clerk disappeared. And I really didn't want to go into a Reagan administration anyway. So I decided to go to a big law firm in Washington and hide out until the Democrats came back. Well, if any of you are keeping up with the years, this is early 80s. It took the Democrats 12 years to come back. And so after hiding out at the law firm for 5 years, I was like, okay, either it's time to buckle down and try to make partner, or it's time to leave. So I decided it was time to leave. And by that time, I had started doing communications and working with the Federal Communications Commission. And I had this small client named Black Entertainment Television that no one had ever heard of. We had, BET had about 10 million subscribers at the time, mostly in rural areas around the country because those were the first areas to become wired. Cities had good antennas, they didn't need cable. And in fact, BET was not even in Washington. I worked on the first cable franchise while I was at the law firm in Washington. So I'd never even seen BET, but they were a client. And around the time I was getting antsy to leave, Bob Johnson, the founder of BET, asked me if I wanted to come to work for the company and start their first legal department. And it just sounded perfect because I wanted to get out of the law firm. I thought I wanted to go into a company, and there weren't very many entertainment companies in DC, so it really worked out. And that was 28 years ago. I started the legal department. First several years, I focused primarily on law and contracts, and as in-house counsel, you do everything. And little by little, I started doing more business things. The first thing I did was build our production facility. At least I oversaw the building. I didn't build it myself. But Bob asked me to take on that project. Then he asked me to run our magazine division, all the while I was still general counsel. And finally, I had to make a choice, and I gave up the law and became chief operating officer of BET. And that was about 20 years ago. And then 9 years ago, when Bob left, I became CEO. So all that to say, I didn't plan this at all. It just was organic and kind of worked out. But as I started doing business, handling business issues and dealing with strategy and working on the deals, I found out that I really liked business more than law. So it was an easy decision when doing both became too much. So I ended up in a good place. I wouldn't suggest it. It wasn't a straight road, but I learned that I loved communications. I learned that I loved BET, and the business side, came naturally.
You started out wanting to change the world.
Yes.
Now that you're on top of the world, how are you changing the world?
In a different way, not the way I planned it, but media is a very powerful medium. And for a long time, BET, as you may know, was the only 24-hour network targeted to African American community. So although our main goal is entertainment, news, public affairs, public service announcements. I mean, we feel a huge responsibility to our community. And so we always think of ourselves as more than just an entertainment network. We're not NBC, we're not MTV, we're BET, which really reflects our community and has more of an obligation. So I think I'm changing the world in a different way. I'm proud of the programming we produce. I'm proud that we give a different voice. I think we were very instrumental in the election and re-election of President Obama by encouraging young people to get out there and vote and making that a priority on our network. We can do things with breast cancer or HIV/AIDS or obesity. So there's so many issues that affect our community. And at BET, we try to deal with those every day, whether it's through a storyline or whether it's through, the White House calling saying, can you help us on the Affordable Care Act? Or we need help with this, can you do that? So, it's not directly the policy process I thought I'd be involved in, but I think we have an impact. And the 500 people that work at BET take it very seriously. And our motto, we did a brand strategy where we locked the executives in a room for about a year. I mean, we let them out to do work and other things, but we met regularly for about a year and a half, and we decided we had to define what made BET different, because by that time we had competition. There were other Black targeted networks. And we decided our strategy was going to be respect, reflect, and elevate our audience. And we were going to show what's hot, what's next, and what matters. So much of what we do is really helping our community and trying to reflect it in a way that we think no one else does. So, I didn't plan to be here. I'm happy I'm here. I enjoy it, and it's really fascinating. And I love the business side of it. As you mentioned, I'm on several other boards, and corporate boards, and as I was getting my feet wet as COO and learning how to run a company, those boards really helped me as I watched other CEOs and how they ran their companies and how they dealt with human resource issues or P&L issues or quarterly reports. So I never went to business school, and if I had it to do over again, I would go to business school and probably skip my master's in public policy and law school. But yeah, I've learned on the job, and it's really been a lot of fun.
Taking that board experience a little bit, I had the privilege of working with you on the Marriott board, and I've seen over the years the perspective you've brought to the discussion so often. Could you reflect a little bit about how your view of how boards work and how board members do have an influence
Right.
on the way the business is run, contrary to what we read about in the paper so often?
No, I think boards can be very helpful in supporting a CEO and bringing different perspectives to the table. And whether that's a different perspective on how the business is run or what kind of new businesses a company can get into, or how they deal with diversity issues, how they deal with female and minorities at the company, how they care about their employees. So I think it's very important for boards to have a diverse boardroom. And I'm outspoken proponent of getting more women and African Americans and Hispanics in boardrooms, because that's where the decisions are made, and that's where it's important to have different voices. So I think when I think about what kind of boards I want to serve on or what my skills are, I think I now, after 20 years of doing this, bring a business perspective. I bring a marketing expertise, especially in terms of how to reach the African American community. I think I bring a sensitivity in terms of issues that I think would be important to most companies. And I look for boards that I'm interested in, that are in businesses that I care about. Marriott being my favorite board, I guess because I stay in so many hotels. I just love the business, and I'm interested in the design of hotels and how they try to make guests welcome and how they treat guests, and the business side of it too. But that's one of my favorite boards. I enjoy looking at the new hotels and seeing how they're going in different directions. Revlon is a cosmetic business. I did an article with the Washington Post where I said when I joined Revlon, there were only 2 women on the board. So it's funny seeing all these older men pass around lipsticks and comment on the colors and how the perfumes smell. Now we have 5 women. I think we may soon have 6 women. And I think that's made the boardroom a more effective place. It has more people that are consumers of the product they create. Washington Gas, that's my local board. I wouldn't say I'm necessarily interested in gas production, but it's nice to be on a local board and a regulated board and really have a foothold into local politics and what's going on with the city. I usually look for boards that deal with consumer products that, I think I could be helpful. I used to be on the Kodak board for years, but went off of that several years ago. So it's been a great experience, and it's a great way to learn how businesses operate and to get to know other businesses.
At business school, we talk a lot about finding your passion and trying to find a career that fits, and a lot of students get very tied up in the whole process of trying to find that perfect job. And it sounds to me like you found the perfect job, but you had a little bit of a circuitous route.
Right.
What kind of advice would you have for students today, in today's market, that have just sort of a maniacal focus on a specific area and may have some struggles finding an entry there?
Well, I think it's important to find your passion. We all work so hard that you want to really care about and be committed to what you're working on. At the same time, when you first come out of graduate school or college, you really have to hone your skills. And I found that a great way to do that was by clerking, because that's a one-on-one with a judge, but also working at a law firm. They have very established programs to bring in first-year lawyers and train them to give them more responsibility. So it was a good training ground. So although I didn't really enjoy that and it wasn't what I wanted to do long-term, I perfected my skills. So by the time I went to BET, I was able to be general counsel. You know, I couldn't have done that going straight from law school. You need experience. So, you know, I'm not going to say I was patient, but I understood that you had to gain experience before you could get to the job that you really want. And, you know, I was 6 years into my career before I thought I found what was the perfect job. The job at BET was the first job I took that I really wanted to do, that I wasn't doing it for experience sake. But I think at that point I was ready. Now, 5 years into it, I may have found out that that was not the perfect job. And that happens a lot too. You know, move on to something else. I was lucky because BET was growing so fast that it seemed like it was a new job every couple of years. Because, you know, one day we were in the restaurant business, the next day we were going public. We were the first African-American owned company to go public on the New York Stock Exchange. The next year we were into the credit card business. So it kept my interest because it was always growing. And as I said, I was very committed to the company. But I think the goal to find something you're passionate about is the right goal. But I think you should realize that that's a process, that don't expect it the first day that you graduate. My daughter is a junior in college. She thinks she's found the perfect job. You know, she didn't want to go to study abroad because she was scared she would lose this job. And I keep saying, you know, calm down. If it's meant to be, they'll have you back. If not, there'll be something else. So, but I think it's also important, and I just gave a student this advice, it's also important to stick with something for a while, to really make sure you get the experience and build your resume. I think sometimes I see with young executives these days, they're too willing to say, okay, a year's enough. I didn't get the corner office, I'm out of here. You know, I'm going somewhere else. And I think you have to, you know, stay in place for a while, get the experience. And, you know, eventually you'll find what you're really passionate about. And you'll know it when you find it.
I think my next question is really one that probably is on the minds of everybody out here, and that is, when you listen to all the things that you have done and do, how in the world do you balance your life, and what advice do you have? And I know one answer, you prioritize, because it's taken over 2 years to get Debbie here. We've tried
And I
for
really
2
wanted to
years.
come, yeah.
So I know you prioritize,
Yeah.
and that's part of it. But what are some of the other secrets that you have?
Yeah, well, I think the first thing is there's really never a balance. You know, as a mother, and I'm divorced, but as a mother with young kids and a very demanding career, you know, you make trade-offs. And, you know, the kids may be, they're always the most important, but you may spend more time this week because the holiday play is this week, or, you know, it's a sports tournament or something that's very important. You may have to fly out at midnight to get somewhere. I mean, I've taken some cross-country plane rides to make sure I was at the Christmas choral performance, or, you know, so I guess what I'm saying is I always tried to be there. But my kids understood at an early age that I had a demanding career. The nice thing about it, and the thing that makes me feel good about it, is both my kids want to go into the music industry, which is sort of the industry. I mean, I don't think of myself in that industry, but a lot of what BET does is in the music industry. So I think I try to involve them as often as possible. I mean, whether it's coming to award shows with me or going to NBA All-Star game. So they
That's
receive.
not tough.
Yeah, no, and that was my point. They got the perks of it. At the same time, their mother may not have been at home every night. And every now and then I'd float a trial balloon and say, well, you know, I can retire and drive you to school. And they're like, no, keep doing what you're doing. We like what you're doing. And I heard Valerie Jarrett say this, who works for the president. She said, you can have it all, but you can't have it all at the same time. She says that she could not have had this job in the White House when her daughter was small. That, she would have been at work, she's at work all the time, and she couldn't have done that. But now her daughter is older, graduated from law school, just got married, and now she can take that kind of job. So I think you do go through, different periods of your time. Like now, both of my kids are away, one in college, one has finished college, and now I feel like I have all the time in the world. I was like, what did I used to do on Saturdays and in the mornings before work? But it is a challenge, but I think if you're passionate about what you do and your children find that, feel that they'll appreciate what you're doing and respect you for it. And now when my daughter calls me for advice, she's trying to help this artist or trying to get somebody on 106 in Park. She's like, well, who do I talk to? I was like, let me see. I try to, be helpful, but not make it happen for her. It's really rewarding that they respect me and understand what I've tried to build. And I remember one of my favorite stories is I came home from work one day and my daughter said, she asked me how, it must have been before she was a teenager. She asked me how my day was. She didn't ask me
As
that
teenagers
much. Yeah, right,
do
she didn't never did that. And I said, well, it wasn't so great. It felt like all I did all day was say no. Whether somebody was asking me for charitable contributions or an executive wanted more money for their budget. It was one of those days where I felt like I was saying no all day long. And so she didn't say anything. And so then about 6 months later, someone asked her what she wanted to do when she grew up. And she said she wanted to be CEO of BET. And I said, well, where did that come from? And she said, well, I like saying no. So this seemed like the perfect job for her. So, you just, Steve, you do what you need to do. And you try to be there for the important things. And, you try to do a good job at work. And some weeks it's easier than other weeks. And, I remember making mad dashes across town to get to the Halloween parade, which lasted 20 minutes, and then trying to get back in time for a meeting. So it can be done, but you just have to not be too hard on yourself. As a woman or a man, I see a lot of young men dealing with this issue, either because they're divorced or because they want to play a more involved role in their children's life. So I see them, trying to leave the office at 3 to make the soccer game or the basketball game. And I think employers are more open to it. And now we have these little devices. You can be anywhere in the world and answering your email and talking on the phone. I wouldn't recommend that while you're at a soccer game. But, you just try to balance both, realizing that there's no such thing as balance. And, you try to enjoy your children when they're children and hope that they forgive you when they grow up.
Well, one of the most important things you do in your job is select people.
Yes.
As you're interviewing, what are the key things that you look for in the talent that you interview?
Well, first of all, and this sounds like it would be a given, but first of all, I look for people that know and understand BET's goals and mission. You'd be surprised how many people come to interview for jobs who've never seen the network. It's like, well, how do it's hard to sell yourself if you don't know the company that you're going to interview with. But I think most of all, I look for individuals and executives who are passionate about something and who I think are flexible in their career path, because we're still an entrepreneurial company, even though the company is 33 years old. So we may be focusing on digital this week. Like this summer, we started something called BET Experience, which was a 3-day festival around our award show. We never know what business we're going to be in. And luckily now it's all media related, but still. So you need someone who's flexible, willing to take on new assignments without always asking for money up front. As I was told once, the money will follow if you do a great job. I think that's the way I progressed at the company. When Bob came and asked me to do different things, I said, sure. And I did it, and I did it on top of what I was doing day to day, and I did a good job, and so my responsibilities kept expanding. And I think that's important. You don't want someone who's so narrowly focused that they don't want to grow with the company. And I look for someone with great educational background because I know they have the skills, the basic skills that you need to be a quick study, because even on a job, you're learning every day. The technology changes, the world changes, and you have to be able to change with it and be quick on your feet. So those are the things I look for.
Well, you've had enormous successes over the years, and you wouldn't be in the spot you are in without that. But I'm sure that you've had some challenges along the way, and from a business perspective. What would be some of the biggest challenges and the lessons learned out of those?
Let me think. Well, I think one of the early challenges was when we went public and learning to deal with SEC regulations and rules. And unfortunately, at the time, we had a CFO who was not up to par. And I had to step in and take over some of those responsibilities. But I think it was all a little tougher than we first thought. All of a sudden you're this small private company that no one is paying attention to, and then the next day you have shareholders. So that was a huge learning experience, and it took us a while to do it. I think if I think back on mistakes, and I hate to call it mistakes. My boss says he sleeps very well at night, that, you're always moving on, you never second guessing yourself. But I think one of the things that I would have done differently is when I took over as CEO, I was nervous and, I was a good COO. I was used to doing what someone else told me to do and making sure things got done. But I hadn't quite gotten the vision thing down yet. And when you become CEO, that's what's very important, what your vision is, where you want to take the company. And I think I was a little scared when I became CEO, and I didn't want to ruin the business model. And music had always been very important to BET. At one point, we had 70% of our shows were music video shows. Well, then hip hop came along, and the music videos got a little... They know, they watch. Got a little more than what you would want for family viewing. But remember, when we started, it was Lionel Richie and Diana Ross, so they were mainstream videos. But then we got into the hip hop world, and I think that I and the company stuck to those videos a little too long. And I'm a lawyer by training, so my standard was whatever the FCC says is allowable, which is a lot. And I think, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on what side of the street you're sitting on. But over time, this one, I talk about it all the time, this one minister in Maryland decided he was going to bring his congregation to my house. And so I had protesters outside my house for about 7 months every Saturday. And they were protesting the hip hop videos. And I always thought it was interesting he came to my house and didn't go to Jay-Z's house or Ludacris's house. I guess my house was closer. But I was like, here I am, Harvard-educated lawyer, very concerned about my community, and I have 200 people standing outside my house protesting because they don't like the videos. And I thought, that was the wrong way to do it, and you shouldn't go to someone's personal house and blah, blah, blah. But it made me think, and that's when we went through the brand strategy of who do we want to be as BET? Not, we're just a black network, but what do we stand for? What are our values? And that process was very helpful in defining what we would do and what we wouldn't do. And one of the things that came out of that, we tightened up our standards. We only have one video show now. And we started saying, okay, artists have freedom of speech and they can make whatever they want, but it doesn't have to be on BET. If someone has to be the adult in the room to say no, that's not exactly the job I wanted, but if that's what I have to do.
As your daughter said, you know how to do it.
Right. I hate saying no, but I learned how to say no to Kanye, to Rihanna, whoever made these, videos that really just weren't appropriate for our air. So that was a big learning point for me. And you know what? They've never called me to complain. I think they were happy to have an adult in the room. You all may remember Kanye did Flashing Lights video. And he was in a trunk of a car, and this woman beat him, and she was, had on a fur. It was just horrible. And so I would never play it, and my folks were like, oh, he's going to call you. He's so upset. This is his art. He never called me. I think, he put it on the internet, which you can get any video you want on the internet now. So there's a market for that, but it doesn't have to be on our networks.
One of the things, as you're talking about this story, the crisis defined you and your leadership,
Right.
and helped you create your vision. And that's such an important message. And so oftentimes people want to avoid crisis, but actually in that crisis, it sounds like it was a turning point for
Right.
you and for the network.
Yeah. And, that process of defining our values. And, the guy who led us through this said so often, people think they have to leave their values outside of their work. And you shouldn't have to do that. You should be passionate about what you care about, and you should be proud of it. And that really was a turning point for our company. And, BT's ratings have been much higher. We tried to stay away from the train wreck reality. Other networks could be getting very high ratings with that. They do. But it's not what we want to do. So it's a hard balance to strike. But, once you define your vision and what's important to you, it does force you to stand a little taller and say, we're just not going to do that. And you're right, it came out of that crisis. And people standing outside my house saying, I'm not a bitch, I'm not a whore. I was like, really, outside my house? But it's something you have to deal with. Yeah. And it's not just in media, it's in any industry. I was giving my daughter some advice, at her job the other day, they wanted her to do something that she didn't really want to do. And I was like, at some point you have to draw a line, and you have to tell people how you feel about things. And I think this is so important in business. And we might not have had all the problems we had with, CEOs going to jail or other people going to prison if someone had just been strong enough to say, I don't care what other people are doing, I don't care what's the best way for the company to be successful, it crosses my values and I'm just not going to do it. And sometimes you have to put a job on the line or, put other things on the line to really be the person that you want to be. And we all have it inside of us, you got it early. Your parents instilled it in you, but you never know what part of business or what part of life is going to cross those values and when you have to, draw the line.
Well, I think in your industry, drawing that line has got to be a lot harder than many other industries.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Because it's really, at the end of the day, it's your gut instinct.
Right, right. And it may not be the right decision, but it's you have to make the best decision you can. And if someone else was running the network, they may have another line, And that's why I stood up to this minister for so long, because I said, I understand your concern. And I was like, but if I let you tell me what 3 videos to take off, then you're running the network, And I said, I can't allow you to run the network. We have a standards committee. We make the decisions. We make the best. We care about our community. We make the best decisions we can, But, you have to go start your own network if you want to make the decisions. So that was, an interesting place to be, too. So.
Well, I've asked all the questions so far, and I know we've got a lot of questions out here, so let me...
How are you doing?
Good.
Debra, thank you so much for coming. My name is Aria Aaron. I'm a Master's of Arts and Management student here at Wake. I received my Bachelor's in Journalism from Fort Hays University. And my question is kind of to follow up when you're talking about your rebranding strategy. You talked about how now you all's vision is to respect, reflect, and elevate your audience. Do you believe that at this point BET has reached all of those points of that vision? And how do you see BET continue to evolve?
I'm very happy with where we are now, but the goal is not to necessarily hit all 3 at the same time. The goal is to not do anything that doesn't hit at least one of them or something that violates. So I think we've made a lot of progress. I don't think there's anything right now that I think violates that. I mean, we're still in the entertainment business. We're still going to have fun, like Real Husbands of Hollywood, for example. Now, that's a spoof on a reality show, and it's funny, and it's crazy, and it's outlandish, but it's a sitcom. You know, it's not, we're not pretending like this is real, you know, so they can be more extreme than when you would want if you were looking at Kevin Hart's Real Family, you know. So you have to understand that entertainment is entertainment. And there's going to be comedians, and there's going to be drama. And so a show like Being Mary Jane is going to have drama, it's going to have sex appeal. You know, it's an adult targeted program, but it's done through a storyline, you know, and it's not exploitive. So, you know, again, we try to balance it and make the right decision. And, you know, we're not always right. There may still be things that may offend some people, or some people, I get comments all the time that we don't go far enough. You know, it's like, why do y'all bleep out these words? No one else bleeps out bitch, excuse me, on television. You know, but we still do, because for one thing, I think the African American community is more conservative than most, right? So they'll allow those words on other networks, but again, when they come to BET, they hold us to a higher standard. So, you know, it's a constant balancing act. I think we're in a good place with our original programming. Yeah, I'm very excited about the return of Being Mary Jane in January. You know, things like Sunday Best and Let's Stay Together. I mean, we have so many great things going on, but there's more to come. I still think there's a lot more to come. And we have a great team, and everyone's working really hard at it. So we have TD Jakes starting on Sunday. Hopefully people will watch that, because that's the other issue with TV. People say they want one type of programming, then they watch the other type of programming. We put on TJ Holmes. So excited about that show. No one watched it. No one. I mean, the ratings were horrible. But everyone says, I want BET to have a nightly news show. But when we put them on, no. So it's called the PBS syndrome. Everyone says they want PBS type programming, but then they watch the Real Housewives of Miami. You know, I mean, so it's that, you know, if someone asks you what you watch, of course you're going to say PBS. But, you know, if you're in the privacy of your home, you're going to watch Bravo. It's just, it's a little bit of human nature. So, so you have to fight that battle also.
Yes.
Thanks for coming. My question, I'm curious. Condoleezza Rice came and spoke to us a few years ago, and she always struck me when she said, you don't have to know what you want to do forever, you just have to know what you want to do next. And in listening to your story, it seems like you were in the constant pursuit of a dream that didn't necessarily come to fruition in the way you thought it might. Right. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on, I guess, when do you know the path that you're on is a sunk cost? Like, at what point how do you keep your eye on the prize and know still that you can be open to other opportunities or something that you're more passionate about?
Yeah, I think it's a gut feeling. You know, if you hate getting out of bed in the morning and going to work, you know there's something wrong. You probably know it's time to leave. Or if what you're doing is so uninteresting to you, and you feel like you're not learning anything. One of the things my father told me early on is you can learn something at every job. And I think that's true, but there may be some jobs where you learn all you're going to learn very quickly. And if you feel like you're at that point, then it's time to move on. It's funny, when I went to BET, I knew that was going to be my last job. I just felt so strongly about the company and its goal and mission. I grew up in Greensboro with the Supremes and Motown and Ebony and Essence, and for this company to exist in the television industry with a brand as great as BET, I could see me working there for a long time. It's the first job I ever took where I didn't have a plan on what was next. And that's not to say I didn't have difficult times at BET, where I thought maybe it was time to leave, but luckily something else would come along and would spike my interest and kept me there. But I think you kind of know when it's time to leave. And I don't recommend that young people stay somewhere where they're miserable. And if you're miserable, you know it. But I think you should focus on what am I learning, what am I getting out of this position, and is it the right time? Have I put in enough time before I move on?
With Netflix and Hulu and the internet and all the competition you have nowadays,
Yes.
how do you see BET continuing to differentiate itself?
Right. Well, that's a great question. One of the great things about my side of the business is we're in the content business, and we want to sell to everyone. So we sell to Netflix, Hulu, Amazon, DirecTV, Dish, cable operators. So we're in the envious position of having the content that they want, even though some of them are trying to be content creators themselves, especially Netflix. But when you think about it, they've only had 2 series, really, so they're not a full-time content creator. So the more distribution systems out there, the better for us. Now, the question is, what does that do to our ratings? And especially a Netflix or on-demand, DVRs, you know, when you're measuring ratings, when Nielsen, who really has an exclusivity on it right now, when they're measuring ratings, they look at today plus 3 days. It's what they call C3. So if you tape a show and you watch it within 3 days after it airs, we get credit for that. If you watch it a week later, we don't get credit for that. So with all the new technology and on demand, it has a tendency to hurt our ratings because we're not getting credit for those viewers. Now what's happening is other people are talking about coming up with their own measurement systems, and Nielsen is talking about measuring iPads and mobile. So when that happens, it'll be better. But right now, you know, we're in a daily ratings battle with all those competitors. And I was saying to Steve earlier, what networks are really trying to do now is create that buzzworthy programming that you have to watch live, because that's what really helps you with advertisers. So like Breaking Bad Sunday night, you know, that was a huge success. 10.5 million people watched that show because you didn't want to be late to that show and read about it on Twitter. So you had to show up right there. Scandal does a great job of doing that. Scandal, you have a lot of Scandal watchers here. Scandal is so well written, and something always happens the last 5 minutes that you don't want to read about that on Twitter. So you're going to show up. But if it's a normal show that just has, you know, kind of a regular theme that's, you know, not a lot of drama, you can tape it and watch it anytime. You cannot worry about it and watch it all in one weekend on Netflix. So that's the key. How do we keep the buzz? You know, something like BET Awards, people show up for BET Awards because they know people are going to be talking about it, even though you can watch it later on. But that's the kind of programming that, you know, cable programmers, even broadcast, I don't know how many of you know it, broadcast was really hurt Sunday night between Breaking Bad and Homeland. You know, it was, I mean, we're at the point where cable has overtaken broadcast in terms of ratings on some nights. So it is a very competitive environment, but from a content perspective, you know, we make more money, we get more distribution. From a competitive environment, it hurts us sometimes.
Question back here.
I was just wondering what was the impact of being acquired by Viacom, and what is it like operating a business in a big media conglomerate like Viacom?
Yeah. It was, and Viacom acquired us 12 years ago, so it's been a while. I wasn't sure what it was going to be like, and I signed a 5-year deal when they acquired us, and to be honest, I didn't think I'd make it the first 5 years. But it's worked out well. They've been very supportive. When they acquired BET, they promised us a lot of autonomy because they knew the Black community would expect a certain editorial perspective from BET. And Viacom understood brands. They have MTV and Nickelodeon and Comedy Central and Paramount. So they made it clear when they acquired BET that they weren't trying to change it. So they kept all the executives, they signed us up to long-term contracts, and they've kept their words. They've been very supportive. And it's helpful because you have other networks in the family, and you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time. When we were standalone, I couldn't pick up the phone and call Nickelodeon and say, how do you all do this, and we didn't have the leverage that we have at Viacom in terms of negotiating cable operator deals or deals with Netflix or Hulu. So it's worked out, and I've enjoyed it. Bob Johnson, who was the founder, left after 5 years, and I think it was a different environment for him. He was used to being entrepreneurial and being the boss, so it was more difficult for him. But I was COO, so it was just a changed environment. But overall, it's a great company. They've treated BET well. They're very committed. They've increased our programming budget quite a bit over the years. I mean, we went from making $10,000 music video shows to, spending $1 million per episode on dramas and sitcoms. So in the 12 years, they've increased our budget quite a bit, and let me make the editorial decisions about what programs we put on and don't put on, and they've been supportive of our brand strategy. So it's been good.
I had a question.
Hi, Ms. Lee.
Hi.
I'm Rebecca Reed. I'm an MA here at Wake, and it's a pleasure to have you. Thanks for coming. Sheryl Sandberg's book, Lean In, has really raised sparked the conversation for women about how they lead and how they make tough decisions. You have to be a certain amount of nice, but a certain amount of tough as well. How do you really balance that, being a woman and being so successful in business and making tough decisions all the time?
Yeah. Well, I think it's very true that women manage differently. And I won't say that's true across the board, but I think one of the things that Sheryl helped to pinpoint, and one of the things I've known for years, is that women do manage differently, and you have to be comfortable in the way you manage. And there's not one right way to manage. To give you, for example, when I became COO, I went from general counsel where I had very few direct reports, and I went to managing this whole company, and it was very difficult for me because I brought my legal hat to it. I thought I was a judge and I wanted to hear all the information. Then I wanted to go away and think about it and then come back and render a decision. Well, that didn't work at all. And most of the people reporting to me were men, and most of them wanted my job. And they weren't exactly, supportive members of my team. And if I gave them any leeway, they would take it. And if I wasn't decisive and I didn't tell them exactly what to do, they would go do whatever they wanted to do. So it took me a while to become more decisive, and it took me a while to create my own team. And it took me a while to make decisions quicker. To really say, okay, you're never gonna have the perfect information. You're never gonna have everything you need. You take what you have, you make the best decision you can, and you stick with it. And I think women bring a lot of good qualities to managing. I think we listen better. I think we're more sensitive. I mean, all these are really generalizations. I hate to do it, but I do think there is, I think leadership is a skill and management is a skill. And I don't know how they teach it here, but I would suggest that when teaching it, that people understand that there are different ways to do it. And you just have to have confidence in what you're doing and find people to comprise your team that are supportive and want to carry out your vision. And I noticed that Bob Johnson was more of a, I don't want to use the word dictator, but he was pretty, he told you exactly what to do. He wanted to pick the programs, he wanted to pick the marketing, he was the founder of the company. So that's the kind of team he had, people who would go out and execute on what he told them to do. When I took over, I wanted people who were experts in their area and would come to me only when they needed me. I don't pick the shows. I mean, I do make the green light decisions eventually, but the programming people are the experts in programming. The marketing folks are the experts. So I want them to be able, I want to give them the resources and the leeway they need to do their job. I'm not going to tell them how to do their job, but I expect them to come back to me if they need more resources or they have a problem, and I'm going to support them. And until I find out they're not doing a good job, I'm going to be right there with them. So it's a different atmosphere, and I'm not sure that applies to all men and women, but I noticed it in my case that I manage very differently. And as I said, the important thing is getting people who can work under your management style and who will carry out your vision. And I don't think you have to be a hard ass to to be a good manager, or you have to be, use the B word. They used to apply that to women who they thought were too tough as managers. I think we've come a long way, and I think you'll find different kind of female leadership out in the business world. Unfortunately, not enough yet. I think we need more, and I think men want to manage in different ways. And I think you just have to find what your personal method is and what works for you. I remember when I was appointed CEO, I got all these nice letters from people or notes from people saying, "Oh, congratulations! It's nice to see someone nice, be appointed." And I was always referred to as a nice person. Well, when you get in the business world and have to start making decisions and saying no, then you're no longer nice. But that just comes with the job. And you have to say no and make tough decisions, whether it's budgetary allocations, or, that program's going to work, but I don't think that one's going to work. Or if you have to restructure and terminate people. I find that's one of the hardest parts of managing is terminating people, either for cause. For cause, it's a little easier. But if you're just downsizing because the business is not doing well, that's tough. If you care about your people and care about their families, but it's part of the job, and it's an unpleasant part, but it's something you have to get used to. So I think Cheryl's book, she received a lot of criticism because for one reason or another, but I think the important part is that books up the conversation more, and we still need to have the conversation about differences in leadership styles and the baggage that we all bring to the workplace.
One last question over here.
Thank you, Ms. Lee, for being here today. My name is Kendall Burke, and I'm a Master of Arts in Management student here. We talk a lot, as rising leaders in the business world, we talk a lot about vision, and I wanted to know how you got buy-in for your vision and how you executed it at BET over time.
Well, first of all, I had to define what my vision was going to be. And at the time, I looked out at the world and saw, a multi-platform world. I saw that content was king. We wanted to go international. Digital was coming up. So the first way I defined my vision was that we were going to get more into original programming. And that was something I thought we needed to do as a business, something that I cared about personally, and something I thought we had to do to be competitive and to really service our audience. So once I defined that, then it was, well, what kind of programming are we going to do? And that gets back to the brand pillars I mentioned earlier about reflecting and respecting our audience. And I think you get buy-in by, one, being clear about what you're trying to accomplish, two, setting the goals of the company every year. I still get feedback sometimes that our employees aren't really sure what the goals are, which always surprises me because, I think they're very clear from year to year, but you still have to explain that to executives, and the executives have to explain that to the people that work for them. And then I think you have to reveal yourself as a leader and your values and what's important to you. Because really, one thing we haven't touched on very much is the culture you set at the company, how you expect your executives to treat their employees, and what you're going to tolerate and what you're not going to tolerate. And I think over the years, people have gotten to know me as a person. The people I have hired that now report to me care about me as a person, care about the company, and they want to see us be successful. So for them to work there, they have to buy into the vision because they have to be passionate about it. And it's really great in this business because you do get a daily report card. And so one of my best days, I have a couple of great days. One was when we were traded on the New York Stock Exchange for the first time, and our stock we had an offering price of $17, and the stock went up to $28, $29 the first day. That was a real high for those of us who worked at the company, to see the folks that worked at the New York Stock Exchange that had never seen a black-owned company go public. That was a real high. But one of the other great days was the day we brought back The Game. The Game was a show that was on the CW, if you remember. CW canceled it, and we were showing the re-airs of the earlier episodes. So all of a sudden there was this letter writing campaign, BET, bring back The Game, bring back The Game. And so CBS owned The Game, so we started negotiating with CBS to try to get the rights, and we eventually did. And The Game had been off the air for 2 years before we brought it back. And we produced it in-house. We took it over from CBS. And so there was this pent-up demand for the show and a lot of buzz about it coming back. So, average show on BET, probably 500,000 to 1 million viewers is what we get. So with The Game, we thought maybe we'd get 2 or 3 million, if it was a great night and everyone tuned in like they said they were going to do. We got 7.8 million viewers. And the next day, when we found that news out, when we got the Nielsen ratings, we were going around high-fiving like we had won the Super Bowl. You would have thought we had won the Super Bowl because we just never imagined we could get that many viewers at BET. That was the highest-rated show ever. Before that, it was the O.J. interview, which was years ago. But I think we got 6 million, and we got it because no one else would let him be on TV. But anyway. So this is a lot more rewarding. But, when you have those experiences and everyone feels a part of it, like when we do the BET Award show every year, everyone at the company is involved in the BET Awards. It's a huge production, and it really, everyone from finance to legal, it's a full company press. So when we get those ratings the next day and we do well, I think we got 10 million viewers the year Michael Jackson died. Those are highs. So it's kind of like a sports team, So when you win, you have the highs. If something bad happens, you have the lows. But that's how you get people built into your vision, that they care so much about the company that they want to win, and that you have a way to measure how you're winning, as opposed to just earnings at the end of the year, which is a good year. We just ended our year last year. We had a good year, and those are good too, and people benefit from that because they get their full bonuses. And so, but you really have to figure out, I guess the bottom line is you have to figure out what motivates people. Is it the financial rewards? Is it the psychic rewards? Is it being proud of the company and how well it's doing? And, sometimes you play on all those levers. When you've had a good year, and it makes people want to work harder and want to do even better. And back to your question over here about being part of Viacom, I think that motivates BET because we want to show as a division dedicated to Black targeted programming that we can beat MTV some nights, that we can beat VH1 all the time. That we do better than Comedy Central some of the time. So, it's a competitive thing as part of the company because we know how our sister networks are doing. But it's a friendly competitive thing most of the time. It's friendly. But, that motivates people too. We want to show them that we can do it just as, and we want all kind of people to watch BET and all kind of people work at BET, but we are unique in the audience that we serve. Like I look at the ratings sometimes, and Univision now beats NBC or CBS some nights. I'm like, good for them. The world is changing, the demographics are changing, and we have to make sure that we have something for everyone. And I think that's the exciting thing about cable and the satellite industry, that you can do that.
Well, Debbie, on the way over here, Debbie mentioned that today is the first day of their new fiscal year. So we hope that this will be the best day of
Oh,
your fiscal year.
great, thank
that
you.
you're with us. And we
Yes.
want to thank you so much
Great,
for spending
thank you.
the day with us.
This
Thank you.
is
very
great,
much.
thank you. Thank you so much. Really, I appreciate it. It's really great, thank you. Thank you. Oh, my God.
Ms. Lee?
Yes.
My name is Jason Webster.
Hi,
And
very nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well.
Yeah,
Beautiful lady. by the
thank you, thank you.
way. On behalf of the Student Government Association here at the School of Business of Wake Forest, we'd like to thank you for spending your time and your insightful words to us as friends, as fans, and as future business leaders.
Oh, great,
We'd
thank you.
like to share this as a token of our gratitude.
Oh, that's great, thank you. Thank you very much. I love that, thank you, thank you. I really appreciate it, thank you very much. This is going up in my office. Thank you, all right. Oh, okay, great, thank you.
And Debbie, we have another picture for you. today.
Okay.
I don't know if half of this picture is as good as the other one, but I know the other half is.
Oh, all
It's a
right,
picture of the
great.
two of us here today.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. That's great. That was fast. Oh, very nice. Thank you.
It's been great to have you back
Thank
in the
you.
Triad area.
Yeah, I'm
We
happy
hope
to
that
be
you'll
back
come
here.
back and see us again.
Great. And I failed to mention how nice you all look. Everyone's all dressed up and looking very professional, and I hope you look like this every day.
Outside.
All right, thank you. Oh, that's great. Thank you. Thank you.